Alex, do you know what the reserve requirement would be?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. So the reserve requirement, say if Alex has $1,000 and he deposits that to the bank. The bank has a set reserve requirement that is set by the Fed that they have to keep a certain percentage of that. So say the reserve requirement is 10% for the bank. The bank would take 10% of the 1,000, which would be $100, and that would go to the reserves. The remaining $900 then could be redistributed or taken out in another loan from, say, Nathan. So, how does that look in our graph? So if you want to increase the money supply, you would want to have a low reserve requirement percentage. So if you have a low reserve requirement percentage, a smaller percentage of that $1,000 is being held in the reserves. Now the opposite of that, to decrease the money supply, a increase in the reserve requirement, say the reserve requirement is now 90%, so 900 of that $1,000 that Alex deposited is staying in the bank's reserves, and only $100 is available for a loan for Nathan now. So that's how the money supply would decrease. Now the second tool that the Fed uses is the discount rate. So this discount rate is similar to, say, if one of us would go take out a loan. It's the interest that you pay for that loan. Now, this discount rate is applied to the regular banks. These are for the loans that the regular banks take out from the Federal Reserve. So, to increase the money supply, there would need to be a decrease or a low discount rate. This means there's a low percentage on the interest for a loan for the smaller banks to take out from the Fed. So it's easier for the regular smaller banks to get a loan from the central bank. This allows more money to be put into the system. On the other hand, if there's a higher discount rate, it is harder for the smaller banks to get a loan from the central bank, and this would decrease the money supply. The third and final tool is called open market operations, and this is the most common tool that the Fed uses. Graph here. Okay. So does anyone know what open market operations? What does the Fed use with that? No? Okay, I'll tell you. With open market operations, the Fed sells bonds or U.S. Treasuries to the smaller banks. And they do this if they buy the bonds from the smaller banks, it will increase the money supply. They're saying, here, I will give you money for a bond that I gave you in the past. So more money is being available to the general public. On the other side of that, if the Fed sells bonds, they're taking your money and giving you a bond in return, and you can't do anything with this until the maturity date. And the maturity date is when the set amount of time you can claim the rewards from that bond. Okay, so a little tool or trick to remember open market operations. When you say buy, remember big. Because if the Fed is buying, the money supply is getting bigger. And on the other side, for sells, if the Fed is selling, think of small, because the money supply is then getting smaller. Okay. So, what does the reserve requirement do? Can you tell me? Just remember?
It makes sure that we have enough money in the federal government growing on it.
Very good. Okay. So, Nathan, how does the Fed set a reserve requirement? What's the smaller bank's responsibility?
Smaller bank, to get loans and then keep a certain amount of that. And then
A certain percentage?
yeah, a certain percentage and then distribute the rest of that back to the bondholders.
Okay. All right, very good. All right,